Hi, I'm Tom Eschen, and welcome to Power in Politics. Tonight we sit down with Jason Palmer. He's an AI impact investor, is what he calls himself these days, looking at different ways to invest in AI startups at not just the grand scale, like you might think of ChatGPT or one of those modules you might see online, but instead some younger generation, Generation Z, millennial startups that impact education, that impact sustainability, things of that nature. So we get deeper into that conversation with him about those topics, along with what it all means in the grand scheme of things when it comes to that potential AI moratorium on regulations for states that's being considered at the federal level, along with the AI bubble and if it will pop and how that could impact people like him. Enjoy. Jason Palmer, thanks so much for doing this and coming on today. Obviously, this has been a road that you've gone down in your career in terms of investing in AI. Why in this facet right now, when it comes to the year 2025, is this what you're looking to do?
Well, the biggest reason is because AI is going to transform our economy. It's going to be more important than electricity, more important than oil and gas. It's actually going to really transform our society. And this is the very beginning of it. And it's the right time to get involved when there's a new technology and there's so much potential.
Why Generation Z? Why that population specifically are you looking to invest?
Yeah, well, it's partly because, they probably remember there was sort of a generation that was born, like the born digital, basically, like the kids that were born in maybe the 80s or 90s, that computers were always around them and they kind of learned to type their term papers on a computer. They didn't actually go through the phase of having to write things out. And then there was a generation that was kind of born mobile and they've been, living perhaps too much on their phones and on social media. But this new generation is going to be born with AI just, part of everything around them. And every person that I talk to in high school or college or even in their, 20s is using AI every single day. Not just for 1 or 2 hours, but sometimes longer than that to help with schoolwork, to help with things at real work if they do real work. You and I were just talking about like Otter AI to transcribe meetings that we do online. It's becoming more and more a part of our everyday lives, and it's just going to increase from here.
Education's one place that you've invested in when it comes to these startups. Why, in that aspect, have you wanted to look into more education-based AI programs?
Yeah, so there's a lot. There's a company called EdTech Insiders that keeps track of the fact that there are now more than 200 companies that are doing innovation in EdTech all across the US, and it's even more across the whole world. One company I'm really excited about because I invested in them is a company called Socrate. And Socrate is this little device here that you see on my lapel. Teachers wear it while they're teaching, and it listens while they teach, and it turns what they say into data and actions to kind of reduce all the administrative burden that teachers have. So it does their attendance for them. It helps keep track of behaviors, praises, warnings, class participation. The goal is next year would even keep track of special education things that need to be kept track of. You probably know that teachers are burning out all across the country. It's a really big problem. We have so many teachers leaving, and the number one reason that they cite is at the end of the day, after teaching 150 kids, they're exhausted, and then they have to sit down and type all this information into all these various platforms. And they can't remember it all. It's almost impossible, and it's kind of exhausting. But this is a way that it can listen to what happens during the day that comes out of your own mouth, and then it turns it into data and it does your admin work for you.
So is it listening to what the teacher is saying with like a transcription? Is that right?
Close,
Yeah.
because this is for education. It's a little different than Otter in that it's not actually keeping a transcript. There's no recording. You can probably imagine a lot of teachers are concerned about like, is someone listening in on my classroom? This is a device that just listens as teachers teach and then turns what they say into data and actions. So there is no transcript, there is no recording. It's just turning it into data and actions, which is a little hard for people to grok, actually. So we're having to teach people about how that works and that there doesn't have to be a recording and there doesn't have to be a transcript. The average teacher does 15,000 to 20,000 words a day. So if there actually was like a transcript, it would be like this massive convoluted transcript. And our system, our Socrate system kind of tunes it down to about 500 data points per day that really matter.
So was Socrate one of these young individuals that you're investing in now?
It's a mix. So
Yeah.
Cameron Flint, who is a co-founder and as chief technology officer, he's about 35 years old, and so he's definitely a millennial. And in fact, the founder and CEO, Maria Anderson, she's a little bit older. She was actually one of Cameron's teachers earlier in his life. And in fact, she still is a teacher in Sandy, Utah, right outside of Salt Lake.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, to have a teacher be the one that has this idea, someone that's looking to help solve problems that they encounter personally, which
That's
makes
right. That's right. And Maria is kind of an exceptional individual in general in that she's been a teacher for almost 20 years now. And she kind of goes back and forth between teaching for 3 or 4 years. Then she comes up with a genius idea, starts a company. Then she sells the company. Then she goes back to teaching for a few years. And this is the same thing here. This is the second time she's started a company like this that came out of her teaching and her work.
another one that you've shown great interest in is a sustainability accelerator. Can you explain to us what that is?
Yeah, well, I was lucky enough to go to the Stanford Sustainability Accelerator out at Stanford in Palo Alto, and that's partly because I'm an advisor to a venture capital fund that focuses on energy solutions, on things that help improve the climate. It's called Bay Bridge Ventures, and they were one of the participants at this conference. And I saw so many crazy, great ideas that use AI. The one I want to mention and I can't remember their exact name, so they're probably going to kill me for this. But basically, it uses a drone to actually plant seeds to try to create new forest. I think it's called Flying Forests, actually. The name just came to me. And Flying Forests can plant 300 trees per minute. And it basically like runs across the ground and drops seeds, drop seeds. Then it runs across the ground, drops a little bit of dirt on them, and then it does the same thing, like for furrow after furrow after furrow. And you can see how this could be a huge game changer for climate change because it's something that actually could like repopulate a whole forest using AI and drones.
And I guess the thought is when we're having this conversation, we should bring up the question, is this taking someone's job? Is that the case here?
There is no other way to plant 300 trees per minute that any human could possibly do. But there probably are people who are, especially in developed countries, like actually going around planting trees. And this might be a solution that displaces those jobs. So I do think it's important to recognize that. I think McKinsey is saying something like 50% of all jobs will be displaced by 2030. I do not think that is remotely likely to happen, but I do think it is likely to happen by 2040. And that's because AI is so powerful. It has so many capabilities. I just think that a lot of these consulting firms are predicting that it's going to happen faster than it actually will.
Yeah, that's why this is, I think, an interesting conversation because you look at the big corporation, you see Amazon, and they're laying some people off because of what
Yeah.
they say. AI is able to streamline some of the things that they're doing, but
Yeah.
this is a different way to apply it, right? I guess is that the way you look at it in this instance, and in some of the ways that you're looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, mainly I'm looking at it with just curiosity to find out what are the use cases. In fact, everybody who says like, should I invest in AI or how should I look at AI? I say, talk to them about the use cases. Are they really improving things? Are they changing something about a particular profession or, and in this case, 300 trees per minute being planted, like that sentence alone captures it and is amazing. And with Socrate, there is no device that can do administrative work for teachers, in the background. Whereas with Otter, there's like 4 or 5 different Otter copycat like companies, but Socrate is the only company like this that actually helps teachers by giving them basically an AI assistant that works for them.
You did a recent forum in DC and you were quoted in one of the articles after that. This might be out of context, but you said founders should hire AI before hiring people. Can you explain that?
I feel like that was taken a little bit out of context,
That's why I asked
but
you.
but
Let's
but
put
at
it
the
back in
same time,
context, right?
but at the same time, it is the way a lot of companies are thinking about it right now. So the amount of open jobs has gone down from like 8 million jobs that were open a year ago to I think it's now in the 4 to 5 million open jobs range. And a lot of companies, when an employee comes to them and says, we need to hire another person to do X, they're saying, well, Have you tried to use AI for that? And that's something that definitely all of these startup companies are doing. Like Socrate is an 8-person company, and they've achieved more in a year than most ed tech companies achieve in 3 years. And the CEO, Maria Anderson, definitely has an opinion that, like, before we hire another person, I want to make sure we've used AI as much as possible. And so startups especially are applying this try to use AI first approach. Like, for example, the Socrate company also looked at using a company to call principals directly that was basically like an AI phone calling system. Now, they ended up deciding not to do that because they felt like it just was not there. It was not high enough quality. But since, selling schools requires calling lots and lots of principals, eventually there probably will be a solution that's better than, a 40 or $50,000 a year SDR is what they're called, whose whole job is just to call 300 people a day. And honestly, it's a very tough, almost like a boiler room job, that those types of jobs probably could be done better by AI.
One of the other tenets that I saw was democracy was another interest of yours. Why?
Yeah, well, probably because I grew up caring a lot about the founding fathers and kind of feeling that I'm blessed to have been born in the United States. My dad instilled in me a really big love of country. He served in the army during his life, and then he also served in education for 40 years. And our democracy is very important and very precious, and I don't think we've done enough. Now that I've done the research on it, we only spend about 60 cents per student on democracy education in the United States. And that's why so few students can name all 3 branches of government or how, understand the name of their own senator or representative. Even adults don't know this. It's not a surprise that children don't. When I was growing up, there was Schoolhouse Rock, and you saw it on Saturday and you kind of learned how a bill becomes a law. Well, there isn't anything really like that now. And there needs to be more curriculum about democracy in schools. There needs to be more education about the value of democracy to the American population. And this should be something that's like motherhood and apple pie. Everybody should be in favor of it, but not enough people are speaking out in favor of it.
Where does AI come into play in that conversation?
Well, I think AI and democracy don't yet really mix, even though, when I was a presidential candidate last year, I did use AI to create kind of a JSON AI version that was a talking version of me. It's still out there online if you want to go look at it. That I fed it with all of my writings and all my policy positions, and then anybody on the planet could ask me any question and they would get an answer. And the reason why I did that is, I don't have the ability to meet 350 million Americans as a brand new presidential candidate who very few people had heard of. And we got tens of thousands of people to try it. We did not get millions of people to try it. But it was enough for, more people to know who I was than otherwise. That's one way possibly that something like that could be part of the next few elections. But I also think we need to be really careful about how we use AI in certain circumstances. And I could see it if, for example, it was used negatively. Someone impersonated Joe Biden's voice and called like 6,000 people in New Hampshire and said,
"It's important that you save your vote for the November election." Voting this Tuesday only enables the Republicans in their quest to elect Donald Trump again.
I'm not running anymore, and don't even go to the polls tomorrow. And that was terrible. And I think that person got arrested, and has serving prison time or jail time, something like that now. But there are good and bad uses of AI.
Because we have seen it when it comes, we talk about elections, more so to me, I guess, from just being the person that follows this is in campaigns, right? I mean, we saw it a lot in the New York City election, specifically Andrew Cuomo with Zohran Mamdani creating these AI generated videos and things. And then you had one in New York 21, and the person that Elise Stefanik would have gone against. So like you do see it in campaigns. And I think that isn't exactly, I mean, I don't know how much that helps democracy. I guess that could be the question, right?
No, that definitely hurts democracy. And this is a place where the law is always too slow. But what we really need is a law that says that anytime AI is used to create a video, that video should have a watermark from the company that created that AI-driven video. And it also should have, rules about you can't use a person's likeness to create a video without their permission, like really simple common sense things. Unfortunately, no state has really passed a law like this. California did just pass a few laws to help regulate AI in California.
I think
but
New York has a couple too.
And New York now has two as well. So yeah.
Now, there's talk of a potential moratorium on states being able to regulate AI through their own laws, the federal government trying to put a halt to that. Where do you stand on that?
There's good arguments on both sides. I generally believe in the laboratory of state democracies when a new technology is around. But in this case, AI is already kind of a national or even a global phenomenon. So I do think once we fully understand, and maybe we will never fully understand because it's a moving target here, there are some things that need to be regulated at the national level, and then there are some things that should be allowed to be regulated at the state level. Figuring out the rules for which they should be is going to be a little bit messy for the next 3 years, but I would be in favor of states passing laws, the federal government passing laws, let the courts sort out which applies to which level, like kind of let democracy run its course. But overall, we do need to figure out a way for courts to go much faster. They are way too slow, not just for AI, but for everything tech related. Tech always runs way, way past the courts.
You mentioned a moment ago that they're behind when it comes to this. How does the government and everyone else catch up?
Right. I think the reality is that the government will always be behind AI until, and sadly, until there's a clear incident where people die as a result of AI. And, even as I say that, I do know that a certain number of people have died in Teslas, and for some reason that information has not come out about exactly, who was responsible, what happened, etc. I do think anytime AI is related to a person's death, that information should be made public, should be made available. Now, on the flip side, I want to tell all the viewers of this that Tesla has published some very good data, and I drive a Tesla as well, that if you have it on full self-driving, you'll have an accident, I think it's 1/10 as often as if you were driving it yourself. And I've experienced that myself, where when my Tesla was in full self-driving, it did a couple moves. It stopped when a kid ran out in front of the car, where I probably would have stopped, but I wasn't 100% sure I would have stopped. And it stopped real hard. So
there's also this conversation about the AI bubble. When it comes to that conversation, as an investor yourself, is that something you're concerned about?
I'm invested in 8 companies where AI is an important part of what the company does, including Socrate. And I do think, especially the big AI models, OpenAI, Anthropic, Perplexity, etc., their valuations have gotten way out of control. That reminds me a lot of 1999 and 2000 in the dot-com boom. Although in this case, I have a feeling there will be a crash, and it's very probable it will happen in the next year or so. But if you're investing for a 10-year horizon, I still think these are great companies to invest in for the long haul.
Where are the best opportunities moving forward that you see for people that want to get into this?
Yeah, if you want to be a smaller investor who puts $10,000, $25,000, and I know these are not small numbers, they're actually kind of big numbers, but that's the usual size of investments as an angel investor, then you would look for companies in a field that you know really well.
Thanks for listening. Hit the subscribe button right now so you can stay up to date on these news-making conversations about the issues impacting New Yorkers the most: power and politics.